Good afternoon. This is another episode of Miller Chat. I'm Robin Miller, the host. I'm very pleased today to have Tom Ingrassia, award-winning author, success coach, and Motown historian, coming on my show today. Welcome.
Thanks so much, Robin. It's a pleasure to be with you and to have this time to chat.
Absolutely. Well, why don't we tell the viewers a little bit about who you are in terms of your books, and you used to work in higher education. So introduce yourself to the viewers.
Well, Robin, I like to say that I'm living, breathing proof that dreams do come true. Because when I was a little kid growing up in the 1960s, I had this dream of being in show business, of being a writer, and of doing all these wonderful and exciting things. But as so often happens in life, that dream it was a long journey to get to that dream. So I spent 25 years working in higher education administration.
Oh, wow.
But I never gave up those show business and writing dreams. And so I started writing when I was in college in the 70s. And that's where I met Mary Wilson of the Supremes.
Oh, yes.
And in the year 2000, when I was in my late 40s, Mary Wilson asked me to go to work for her. So I left higher education. In fact, literally, Robin, I went into my office at Clark University. I was the assistant dean of the business school at Clark University at that time. I went into my office that day and told my boss, the dean, I'm leaving, and I don't mean I'm giving you 4 weeks notice. I mean, I'm leaving tomorrow.
Oh, wow.
Because Mary Wilson had a cross-country tour coming up, and I needed to be on the road with her. And the interesting part of that story, Robin, is that was just the day before 9/11 happened. In 2001 is when I left. It was when I left Clark University. I'd worked for Mary sort of part-time on the side for about a year. And then in 2001, I left to join her full time. And it was the day before 9/11. So I woke up that next morning, turned on the television and saw what was happening in the world. And I said, oh my God, what have I done?
Mm-hmm.
But here I am 21 years later, and I'm still living my dreams. I'm still, I still have a lot of connections with people in show business. And I'm finally confident in the fact that I am a writer. And my books have won some awards. We'll talk a little bit more about the books. But I'm that proof that even an ordinary person, and even a person who grew up feeling that they were nobody, can accomplish incredible things in life once you have that ability to see in yourself the things that are possible. And once you have that strength to get past the obstacles, you can accomplish anything that you want. And also having someone behind you who gives you that push. And, it was Mary Wilson who told me, you can live into your dreams. You can do these things. And she's the one who gave me the chance to do that. So I had all these, I've done all these things in life now in the past 20 years that I dreamed about 50 some years ago.
Well, is it okay if we talk a little bit more about Mary Wilson? I mean, think about it. You're working at Clark University. You're just like everybody else working. And all of a sudden, you're now in show business. How in the world how did she find you? Or did you find her?
Well, we kind of found each other. And sadly, Mary Wilson died last year, very, very suddenly, which was a tremendous loss to me. I'm still a little bit shattered, but I fell in love with the Supremes and with Motown back in 1964 when I was 11 years old, and I saw the Supremes on the Ed Sullivan Show for the first time. And that night, and I remember this as if it was yesterday, I turned around to my mother while the Supremes were on the Ed Sullivan Show and said, I'm going to meet them someday. Yeah, right. Sure, kid. Of course. Right. I was this little white bread boy living in upstate New York. What did I know about this world? But when I was in college, 8 years later, when I was 19 years old, I was working on a project, and Mary Wilson agreed to let me interview her for the project that I was working on.
Oh.
And one of the things I've always admired about her is she has this innate ability, or had this innate ability to see in others what we don't see in ourselves. And especially in young people, she's taken so many young people under her wing during her life and during her career, and helped us to achieve our dreams. And she saw, so she saw things in me, and we maintained a really close and special friendship for many years. And she would occasionally ask me to help her with projects she was working on. When she was writing her books, she asked me to help her with some of the research, and she wanted to start doing lectures on college campuses, and she knew that I worked in higher education, so she asked me if I could help her get gigs on college campuses. And then again, in 2000, she asked me if I wanted to go to work for her as the creative director of her merchandising company.
Oh,
And that was the moment, Robin, when I realized that, I'd had these childhood dreams of going into show business, but I don't have performing ability. But
okay.
I realized at that point that I have management skills and management talents, and people in show business need management talent.
Yes.
They need people behind them managing things for them so they can do what they do on stage. And so I jumped at that opportunity because, again, that was my dream come true. And I knew that if I didn't say yes right then and there, I would never have that opportunity again. So that's how I got to know Mary Wilson. And she really is probably the most influential person in my life. And she really is the one who helped me to understand that I can do whatever I set my mind to do as long as I believe in myself.
And did you get to meet the other Supremes like Diana Ross?
I have not met Diana Ross. I've met most of the other Supremes at one time or another. And and during the time I was working for Mary Wilson, I worked for Mary for about 5 years, both as the creative director of her merchandising company and as her executive assistant. And so, here I was, this kid who grew up loving music in the 1960s, and all of a sudden I was meeting all of these musical stars who I idolized growing up. And then my business started to expand, and I started also managing other entertainers, people like Arlene Smith from the Chantels, June Montero from the Toys, the Motown group, the Velvelettes. So all these people that I grew up listening to and idolizing, all of a sudden I was working with, and so that for me, I mean, that really was the dream come true.
Yeah, like the American dream.
That, absolutely the American dream. Yes.
Wow. Did that lead to the book that you wrote, Reflections of a Love Supreme, Motown Through the Eyes of Fans?
It really led to both books, Robin.
Okay.
The first book that I co-wrote with Jared Kradimsky, One Door Closes: Overcoming Adversity by Following Your Dreams, is a direct outcome of my life experiences, and wanting to not only share my story, but find other people who had compelling stories as well to share about how through adversity we made things happen for ourselves. But then very definitely, Reflections of a Love Supreme is a direct outcome of my association with Mary Wilson, because during those years I worked with her, I got to learn the story from the inside out.
Oh, yeah.
And I also got to meet fans, or Motown fans, from around the world who I knew had these incredible private photo collections that they had taken of their favorite Motown stars through the years. And so Reflections of a Love Supreme really is an album, is a book that tells the story of Motown through photographs. So it's kind of like, I like to refer to Reflections as a small format coffee table book.
Well, I can see behind you, you have some collection.
And that is such a small part of my collection. I started collecting Motown memorabilia back in the 1960s. Yes, and so that really put me in good stead when I decided to write the Motown book. Interestingly, I first decided to write a book about Motown back in the 1980s when I was in my early 30s. And in fact, just the other day, Robin, I was going through some papers out of our safe deposit box, and I came across the original copyright that I had taken out in 1986 for the book I was writing about Motown. But back then, I kind of lost my courage, and I said, well, you're not good enough to do this. You have nothing new to add to the story.
Right.
And so I set it aside. And it wasn't until 2015 that I finally, I finally had the confidence in myself, and I had what I thought was this new and different concept of looking at Motown through the eyes of fans rather
Right.
than through the eyes of the artists themselves. That I realized that, yeah, you can, that you can do this. You can do
Mhm.
this. And the book went on to win 2 national awards as the best music book of 2016.
Oh, wow.
Yes, yeah.
Wow. Well, let's shift gears a little bit. Let's talk about let's talk about your bestseller, One Door Closes, Overcoming
Yes.
Adversity by Following Your Dreams. Tell me a little bit about that.
Well, that One Door Closes, Robin, it's a very interesting book in that it presents the stories of 16 people from all walks of life who had to overcome what they felt were seemingly insurmountable obstacles on their roads to success.
Mhm.
And so the book, and the what I like about the book and what I think is the power of the book is these are all first person stories. Jared and I interviewed each of the people in the book personally, and we didn't clean up their stories. So the stories that you read in One Door Closes are right from the source's mouth. And so again, there are people from all walks of life. Most of them are what I like to refer to as just ordinary people who
Mhm.
achieved extraordinary things. Many of the people in One Door Closes live right here in central Massachusetts. So
I noticed that.
yeah, so there are people in the book that people who live in this area probably know, but there also are 3 very special people in the book. Sherry Payne, who was a member of the Supremes in the 1970s and who I know very well. June Montero from the 60s singing group The Toys. Their big hit was The Lover's Concerto, and I worked for June for a number of years. And then Mary Wilson wrote the epilogue to the book. But the stories in One Door Closes are so powerful and they're so compelling, and they cover the gamut, and they're stories about things that all of us have experienced, going through catastrophic illness. One of the
Mhm.
stories is about a man from here in Holden, where I live, who suffered a traumatic brain injury in a bicycle accident. June Montero's story is so interesting. She is a singer, and she was diagnosed with throat cancer.
Mm.
Now, for a singer, a throat cancer diagnosis is the most devastating thing because your
Yes.
voice is your living.
Mhm.
But her story is about how she was able to overcome that, and she's back out singing again. She has her own group now, and she's back,
Mhm.
and she's back to doing that. We have stories about domestic abuse. We have stories about bullying, about job loss. Annette Rafferty, the founder of Abby's House, is
Mm.
in the book also. And Annette's story is about how she, as a woman, was able to go against the male Catholic hierarchy who kept telling her, you can't, what she wanted to do, kept telling her, you're just a woman, you can't do this. And how
Right.
she just pushed through. And now look at Abby's House. I mean,
Yeah.
it's Abby's House is, now in its 40th plus year of providing housing and services to women in crisis, women and children in crisis.
Yeah.
If she had listened to what other people were telling her, we wouldn't have that resource in this community. So those are the kinds of stories that people get in One Door Closes. And the people who are telling the stories not only share their stories, but they share the wisdom that they learned along their journeys, and the wisdom that they want the reader to also be able to be inspired by. So the stories form the first half of One Door Closes. But how many times, Robin, do you read an inspirational book and you get to the end of it and you say, wow,
Yeah.
I'm really fired up now, but what do I do? How do I make this happen for myself?
Mhm.
So what Jared and I did for the second half of One Door Closes is we developed a series of 10 holistic self-assessment tools. So you read the stories in the first part of One Door Closes. You get inspired by those stories. Then you complete the 10 self-assessments. And by the time you finish that book, you have your own step-by-step guide for how to get from where you are today to where you want to be a year from now, 2 years from now, 5 years from now. And and you have that blueprint to follow and to keep you motivated and to keep you on target.
Yeah, I noticed that you had a first part and a second part. How did you get these people? Like Holden, how did you get them?
Well, it's interesting that the way One Door Closes came about is kind of an interesting story in itself, Robin. Jared Krudimsky and I met in a business networking group, and we became very good friends, and we became running buddies. And during our early morning runs, we would talk about life and about our goals. And one morning I said to Jared, I've always wanted to write a book to motivate and to inspire people. But and it's locked inside of me. I don't know how to get it out.
Mm-hmm.
And Jared said, well, wait a minute, I want to write a book too. Why don't we write it together? And I thought, well, okay, maybe that's the key. Maybe that's the way that I can get out of myself what I haven't been able to get out. But we talked. All we did for the next year and a half was to talk about it. We kept saying, oh yeah, we'll start the book. One morning we were out for one of our early morning runs, and I said, and actually this was on New Year's Eve day of 2012.
Okay.
And I said to Jared that morning, okay, we can't just keep talking about this. If we're serious about writing this book, then we need to commit to doing it in 2013. We need to make that commitment. And Jared said, great, how about One Door Closes, Overcoming Adversity by Following Your Dreams for the title?
Yeah.
And Robin, that was the key that unlocked everything that was inside of me. And everything from that point on just kind of came flooding out. As Jared and I started talking about writing this book and what we wanted the concept to be, we personally knew some people who had gone through traumatic experiences and triumphed over them. And then the more we talked about the book, people kept contacting us and saying, you need to talk to so-and-so because they have a truly amazing story.
Right.
And of course, then I knew my contacts in the entertainment world who had amazing stories. And so we pulled those people in as well. We actually ended up with more stories than we could use in the book. So there probably is going to be a volume 2 of One Door Closes. Once, and we'll probably talk about this in a few minutes, but One Door Closes is being made into a documentary film right now. And once the documentary is out, I think we'll start working on volume 2 of One Door Closes.
Tell us about, go ahead and tell us more about the documentary. Well,
the documentary, right from the get-go, Robin, I knew that there was such power in One Door Closes, and that has been affirmed and validated for us as Jared and I have gone out and, talking about the book. One Door Closes is going to be celebrating the 10th anniversary of its publication next year. And we're still out, we still get invited out to do talks about it, to do programs based on One Door Closes. And we actually have had people contact us after they've read the book and said, you have no idea how much this book changed my life. When I read so-and-so's story, I thought I was the only one going through that. And once I read how they came through, I knew that there was hope for me. So we knew, and I said to Jared right from the get-go, we need to make this book into a documentary film because it needs to have a wider audience than just the written word.
Yeah.
We talked for a number of years. We looked for a number of years for the right person to be the director. We couldn't find anybody who we felt shared our vision for what we wanted to do with a documentary. One day, about 5 years ago, out of the blue, my phone rings and I pick it up, and the other end, a young woman says, Well, hi, I'm Anna Walsh. I'm a documentary photographer and filmmaker.
Oh,
I know Corey Mosier, who was in your book, One Door Closes. I want to make a documentary film about Corey's journey. And Corey tells me you want to make a documentary based on the whole book. Do you
wow.
think we could work together? It was one of those situations that within 5 minutes of talking to Anna, I knew she was the one to
Mm.
make this happen and to be the director of our film. So we've been working on the film now for about 5 years. Of course, during the COVID shutdown, we had to shut down production for about 18 months, which put us back a little bit. And I've been lamenting the fact that we're so far behind schedule until I realized that 2023 is the 10th anniversary of the publication of
Yeah.
the book One Door Closes. The documentary is coming out in 2023. So it's coming out to coincide with the 10th anniversary of the book. So the timing couldn't be more perfect, actually. What we're doing with the documentary, because of course we can't feature all 16 stories.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we picked, well, originally we picked 5 stories out of the book that were going to be featured in the documentary. We're down to, sadly, we're down to 4 now because one of those stories was going to be Mary Wilson's story. And of course, unfortunately, she passed away before we were able to film her segment. And she was going to provide the narration for the documentary as well. But the documentary is going to feature the Ken McDonald, the man from Holden who had the traumatic brain injury. It's going to feature Sherry Payne of the Supremes telling her story of how something her father said to her when she was 10 years old. And he told her after she'd lost a talent show that she wasn't good enough, that she didn't sound very good. And
Mm.
how that has kind of hampered her throughout her adult life. Even when she was with the Supremes, she never felt like she was good enough because of those words that her father said to her as a child, and the depression that has caused her to go throughout her life. And then June Montero telling her story of struggling with throat cancer and her triumph over that. The documentary itself is going to be called One Door Closes, Corey's Courage.
Oh.
And the centerpiece of the
Mm.
documentary is the
Well,
story of Corey Mosier, who's now Corey Verano, because she's married since the book was published. Corey, when she was 12 years old, was diagnosed with cancer in her femur.
mm.
And of course, when you're 12 years old and you're told you have
Mhm.
cancer, you think it's a death sentence. She thought she was going to die. Um, Obviously, she did not, but from the time she was 12 until she was well into her 30s, she kept having surgery after surgery after surgery after surgery to replace artificial bones in her leg, and they would keep breaking. She, you
Oh,
know,
yes.
she was never able to ride a bike. She was never able to run. She was never able to participate in sports the way a normal teenager would. About 3 or 4 years ago, so in the book, Corey shares the story of her journey from childhood to adulthood when she was starting medical school because she wanted to become a doctor. She wanted to give back to others and help others the way she had been helped. And then about 3 years ago, Corey made the decision that the having to have these repeated surgeries on her leg, it just wasn't working for her anymore. So she made the decision to finally to just have her leg amputated.
Oh.
And so now she has a prosthesis. She's able to do things she was never able to do before. She rides a bike. She participates in triathlons now and runs marathons. And she has her own medical practice now. And she is an advocate for other amputees. She travels to Washington on a regular basis to advocate for funding and support services for amputees and their families. So hers is the centerpiece of the documentary. And hers is such an inspiring story. When you think about being a child and thinking that you have no future ahead of you, and then to now in her early 40s, she truly has lived into her dreams of, now being a physician, now being able to give back and to help others who were in the same situation that she was in, and to give them hope that yes, you do have a future and you can triumph over this tragedy that you have in your life.
Wow. Well, we got less than 2 minutes.
Okay.
If
Wow, that
if
went
you
fast.
want, it went very quick, very interesting. Why don't you tell people how they can contact you?
The best way to contact me, Robin, is through my website. And I think the easiest website for me to give is ingrassiaproductions.com. There's a contact link on the website, and I do answer every message personally. So it doesn't go to somebody in an office, in some far away place. Those messages come directly to me. And that's also the best way to find out where I'm going to be in terms of talking about the books, doing author talks, doing motivational lectures and workshops. I also travel all over the country doing lectures about Motown and the role that Motown played in the civil rights movement in the 1960s. So it's all part and parcel of my life and my story. And as I say, I'm living, breathing proof that dreams do come true, because in my own way, I'm in show business now.
Yeah, I mean, you went from higher education, right, to a
Yes.
college environment, higher education,
Right.
and then you took the leap into show business. And of course, probably when you told your boss that, did your boss believe you?
Nobody believed me. Everybody thought I had lost my mind, Robin. Everybody said, "What? Why are you doing this?" But that was my dream. That was my dream. And my core message to people is, if something speaks to your heart, don't hold back. Jump, grab the opportunity, and see where it takes you. And for me, it's taken me to every place I've ever wanted to be.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Well, like I said, I've been doing the show 23 and a half years. And again, when I told people I had a show, they kept saying, yeah, right.
Yeah. Right. Yes, I know that all too well, Robin.
Right. I'm not on national TV, but the point is that when it comes to show business, people see it as a far-reaching goal, like making a football team or a baseball team.
Right.
The odds are hard against you.
Yes. But we can all achieve our dreams, and we can all achieve our goals. All it takes is having courage and faith and believing in yourself.
Right. All right. Well, I want to thank Tom Ingrassia, award-winning author and Motown historian, for coming on my show today. Talk about his book, One Door Closes, Overcoming Adversity by Following Your Dreams, and the reflections of a love supreme Motown through the eyes of fans. Thank you very much, Tom, for coming on.
Robin, thank you so much for having me, and good luck in all of your exciting endeavors as well.
Yes, you too.
Thank you.
Okay. Good night.